Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Broadband Leadership Roundtable with Blandin Foundation. Today, I'm going to turn it over to Bill Coleman in just a minute, but we also have our special guest here, Matt Fulton of Polco. Thank you, Bill.
Good morning, everyone. Bernadine, Jocelyn of Blandin Foundation and I have been talking with Matt about the use of Polco in working with communities. And we really see a lot of opportunity for communities to get information from residents, to have them share their perspective on a variety of things in real time. And so I'm going to let Matt jump in and talk about Polco and how that works and how you might use it in your communities. Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Good morning, everybody. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks a lot, Bill and Mary, for letting me have a couple minutes this morning. And it's nice to see a couple people who I know online and participating. So just for those of you that don't know me, a little bit of my background. I was a city manager in Minnesota for my entire career, or at least up to this point. And mostly in the Twin Cities, served most of my career in New Brighton and served some time in Coon Rapids and in West St. Paul. And then a couple years ago, I joined Polco because, well, for a variety of reasons. I think that some of the stuff that we're seeing today, just the civil unrest and some of the stuff that's going on in communities, is in part kind of tied to the lack of people's connection to their communities and in the broader connection with the way local government operates. And when I first saw Polco, I mean, during my career, there were so many projects that failed because the council reacted to the people in the room, or they reacted with their gut on just what they were feeling themselves. And we didn't really ever have what I would consider a great connection with the community. And I've always lived in the communities that I've managed. And so I know that people are interested in are interested in things that are going on around town and projects that the city is participating in. But we're not really very friendly, I think, to connections with the community, because council meetings are always at night and people are either at a soccer game or having dinner with their kids. So when I saw this Polco tool, it really made me think that as you think forward as to how people are going to be communicating in the world going forward, and particularly I think it's been proven out with some of the remote work that we're now being forced to work in, that a tool like this is really going to be something that communities can resonate towards and benefit from, because it becomes an ongoing tool that you can use for engagement on an ongoing basis. And because, as Bill points out, it's a real-time tool, you can use it for projects that are coming up, projects that you're planning on. You can certainly use it for trying to get people's sentiment and value statements on budget priorities, project priorities. And so it's a very practical tool that you can use. It becomes part of your communication strategy, and it's proving itself out that way. Last year, we actually merged with National Research Center. Many of you probably know the National Research Center. They've been around for 25 years and have been doing community performance assessments and have got just an outstanding reputation. And so when we combined with the NRC, we not only got the benefit of their survey scientists, but then we melded with the availability of technology that Polco provides. And so we really have kind of created this best model where communities can have a flexibility in terms of how they administer performance assessments and engage with their communities, from simple engagement where you're just trying to get a sense for where people's heads are and opinions are on different issues, to having a scientifically valid survey tool, including the use of technology. The whole idea behind Polco and the technology platform is kind of a post, share, discover. You post a question or you post an issue that you're wanting to engage on, you share it through all of your communication channels. And whether it is Facebook or any of your web pages, capital web pages that you might have available, and then you get all the analytics in real time. And all of the analytics are demonstrated and shown on a digital dashboard. With the introduction of, or the combined power with the National Research Center, you now have also the ability to get professional surveys, custom questions. They have a handful of just great tools that are being used by communities. There's the one that most people are recognizing. It's the National Community Center, or I'm sorry, the National Community Survey, which gives you an overall quality of life assessment. We've been doing a lot of work with the National Business Survey. We've had questions and assessment tools that are kind of focused now around COVID, given all of the impacts that are going on with our economic development environment. Using the MBS and some of our COVID-related tools has really been helpful for communities. The National Employee Survey is another tool that and the National Research Center has. This is really probably going to become more important as we start to integrate employees back into the workforce, just trying to pay attention to employee health and employee satisfaction in kind of this new world of COVID, post-COVID. The one that I've been spending a lot of time on, particularly now, is the National Police Services Survey. This is one that is designed to help get resident sentiment around community policing. As you kind of watch all the riots and the civil disturbances that are going on, I think it's really going to be important for communities to get a good sense of where the overall community is as it relates to community policing, because it'll help guide and inform decisions that need to be made around that particular service area. And then finally, the CASOA, which is a community assessment survey for older adults. As communities get older, communities need to be paying attention to making sure they're accommodating and considering the needs of the older adults. And so from a strategic planning standpoint, that becomes a very valuable tool for communities to use. Once you start posting and sharing and discovering, you can kind of get a sense. This is really designed to just help you understand what the questions look like. You share them, and then the analytics that come on the other end. You can map out sentiment. It's great from a public service standpoint, a service delivery standpoint, because you're able to identify down to a census block sentiment that residents are feeling. And you can, if you have let's say a public safety issue and you threw out a question relating to that particular issue, you can identify down to a neighborhood essentially where the sentiments are. And then, you would send out your police department to figure out what the issues are and to work with the neighborhood to work through those kinds of issues. Just another example of how some of the analytics, we have a handful of demographics that are available. Kind of the default ones that communities use generally fall for ages, gender, and breakdown for districts, kind of council, wards, districts, or commissioner districts. But we have other ones like income decile, educational, head of household numbers. I mean, we have a handful of demographics that you can use to benefit from the tool. We've been doing a lot of work right now on COVID-related work. We just completed several national level surveys to kind of figure out and to identify what the impacts have been on residents. We just completed one for the National League of Cities, which was focused on member impacts. They used that actually for their lobbying campaign at the federal level when they did the first COVID release package, the CARES package. And so people that have the Polco platform right now, and Polco actually right now is a free platform. It's always free, but we've actually been adding content so that if you had a Polco profile, you would be able to utilize the COVID assessment impact surveys that we have online and available to help look at both the resident side as well as the business side. And we're going to be continuing to provide content to the profile. One of the things that we realize is that communities and people that are working with the profile really appreciate having the value of the added content just simply available to them, so that it'd be relevant topics for today's time. So right now we probably have some relating to budget priorities, certainly still COVID related kinds of concerns, just really to try to help communities deal with the issues that they're dealing with in real time. Rochester's been a very successful Polco user, and they, over the course of the last year, have been able to really garner a huge following. What ends up happening is that when you when you first go onto the Polco platform, you're asked for your name, your zip code, and your email. The name and the zip code actually are used to allow us to check to see whether or not you're a registered voter in town. And if we can verify that you're a registered voter, then we also can get publicly available data to complement that information. And that's where we get all of the demographic information. Anybody can respond to a survey and you benefit from all of that information, but having the ability to verify the status of your residents allows you to separate out and really get a better sense for what your residents are feeling versus the overall responses are. Generally, they mirror themselves very well, but it's also nice to get a little bit deeper in the weeds on who's responding to the surveys and what the sentiment is, especially because you can geographically now locate it. The email is actually something that we use simply for helping to build that digital panel. The idea behind Polco is that you build a panel that can benefit from the engagement opportunities all the time. Every Thursday morning, we send out an email that tells you that your local government is asking you to respond to surveys that have been published. Once you respond to it, you won't get that email. But if there's anything that's active that you haven't responded to, we send that information out to you. And it just makes it easier for residents to be able to respond to questions at their own convenient schedule. One of the neat things about this tool, which we've been using quite a bit as we scale it on regional levels, and this is something that Bill and I have talked about a little bit with some of the work that's going on with Blandin, is the ability for a survey to actually be reposted and looked at in a variety of different ways. In my mind, it's a wonderful way of allowing you to standardize questions and then being able to aggregate at a whole bunch of different levels. So imagine that you have a question that's been posted on your city profile or your regional profile. Other communities that are interested in that same content would be able to actually repost it on their own Polco profile. And it'd be under the same kind of schedule that the parent entity has used for the survey, but it would be mirrored on all of the different community profiles. And you can look at it then at your own individual level. So you have the benefit of using somebody else's survey and aggregating that data at your own local level, getting all the verified information, all of the overall information, which would benefit you and kind of save you the effort of authoring your own question. You are essentially using the benefit of the parent entity. The other value, though, is that you can look at that data collectively. So around the issues of broadband, if you were engaging on a topic within your own community and you were all using the same question, you would all be able to look at it locally, but the parent agency, the Blandin project, essentially could look at it on an aggregated basis as well. I think particularly as you're thinking about small communities, rural communities in Minnesota, the value of being able to develop a story by doing something through the reposting mechanism is really a valuable tool, because you're able to engage with your local communities on whatever the questions are, but then you're also able to aggregate it at a higher level, which essentially would help tell the story about rural communities in Minnesota. And I think that's a very useful tool that would be helpful to all of you. Does that make sense to folks? Anybody have any thoughts?
So, Barbara, I have a question as one of the Blandin communities. So is this, as a Blandin community, Polco, is this public information or information that's just available to the people in the group?
The detailed demographics are limited to the admin, but the results are all available as presented when they're finished.
So you mentioned cross-link to voter data and stuff like that, so that would not be available for a Blandin community?
Yeah. The verification process that we use is the voter registration files, although there are opportunities to use other verification databases if there was something that you would prefer to use. You can lay over different verification databases. The default that we are currently using is the voter registration files. And as the as the only demographic data that we capture is public data. The details of the demographics are limited right now to the people who have administrative rights. But generally what ends up happening is the results when the surveys are done are publicly disclosed and shared. So clearly it'd be something that you would use for public purposes once it's completed.
Well, my concern is linking to the voter database. I live in a county that is very conflicted right now, and there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there. And I don't want this to go wonkers because of that. And so I'm concerned about it's more than a survey is how you're describing it. And so I have some concerns about that.
When you say it's more than a survey, I'm not sure I follow that.
Well, if you're linking into the voter database, I just feel like, and I'm talking to Bill also here too, I just feel like as a Blandin community, we need to have a bigger discussion about what we're launching here so that it doesn't come back on us with a bunch of conspiracy theorists and stuff. I live in a very conflicted community right now.
You know, there's a lot, when communities run into that kind of issue, there are opportunities to simply do it anonymously as well, where you do it on a guest pass and you don't do the verification process. And communities have used that. The Metropolitan Airports Commission, as an example, in their strategic planning process, actually used Polco and just enable their guest passes. And so the focus then becomes all responses. The limitation of that is you're not able to complement it with the additional demographic data, but you certainly get overall great data just because of the responses that you're getting overall. So that's the way communities have dealt with that particular issue.
Well, and I don't think it's undoable. I just think that our steering committee and our county needs to have a better understanding about what we're launching here, so that they know what we're getting into.
So there is no launch. This is just an informational webinar about this product. It's a way to use technology to gather information from your community. But there is no use by Blandin or the broadband communities.
Oh, I thought there was.
No, this whole thing generated from conversations that I've had with Bill and Mary on just the use of the tool. But this is really just to share with you how the tool works and how it operates.
So we're not using this as a Blandin broadband community?
No, not yet.
Oh, thank you.
There's no, you could use it.
Oh, I like the tool. I just think a lot more groundwork needs to be built. I was concerned that we were doing this Thursday.
No.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. The other issue or the other capability that Polco has or will have within the next couple of weeks is really the opportunity for real-time engagement. As communities are dealing with their council meetings remotely, having the ability to actually engage their residents remotely while a meeting is going on becomes a really useful tool for elected bodies or folks that are using this tool in audience participation ways. And the value of it is, I mean, in a lot of communities, all communities are doing remote engagement right now, and they're providing opportunities for residents to respond and provide input. The difference is that it's not organized, and you get essentially a stream of consciousness and opinions on issues. By using a tool like this, you're able to actually incorporate organization and verification if you decide to use it on whatever the topic is. And so from a council perspective, it becomes a new way of engaging with your community on things that you're dealing with on a regular basis at your council meetings on a bi-weekly basis.
Matt, we have a question from Blossom Cindy Kong.
Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
Good morning.
I think that this is a wonderful platform. I'm currently in Red Wing. I was part of the Hands for Hope for the Blandin Foundation about a year ago. And I feel that it's a wonderful platform or just a program that we can utilize here in Red Wing itself, because I even recall going to our Hands for Hope meeting, because we're still debating if we want to form or still unsure. during that time, but we were debating regards, shall we use data, shall we use statistics? And upon that meeting, I was telling them, I mentioned to a lot of the people there, a lot of people don't know my personal story, but of course, upon, you know, being a part of LPEP, you know, the Hands for Hope here in Red Wing, a lot of the people who attended the classes and everything, they were very familiar with my story. So it's like what I was telling them, you know, data and statistics is not accurate. You know, there's people who choose to be silent for a reason. And so I think overall, I think it's a wonderful platform that I could probably introduce to our community here. And thank you for sharing that information. That's all that I wanted to say.
Thank you. Thank you for the comment.
Yeah, thank you. I know I only have a couple of minutes left. In the city of Rochester, the way the Polco works is you're directed to go to a screen. This is actually North Oaks, which is a smaller community that uses it. And when you have the platform, you'll direct people to this dashboard, which is branded for your particular purposes. And you can set it up however you want, but then you'll have all of your questions posted on your dashboard. And it's a very easy tool to set up. It's a very easy tool to set up questions. You can set up individual questions, or you can set up surveys. So it's a very flexible tool. People respond to these questions, and in real time then, administratively, you're able to actually see the results of the survey coming in. This is a question that was actually posted in Rochester about resident perceptions regarding their police department. One of the nice things about the platform is you can actually embed live video or streaming video, pictures. You want to make sure that as you're sending issues out to the community, that you're also informing people about what you're trying to get their input on. And so that's an important aspect of the overall tool. The tool, though, allows you to kind of watch the growth of your, not only your overall Polco profile. In Rochester's case, they have currently 1,754 total subscribers, and you can see the gender breakdown and the age representativeness, as well as a map where people are responding from. But then you can get the same information when you're actually in a specific question, where you can actually see where participation is coming from. In this particular survey question, they had 257 total responses, and they had 199 of them were actually verified as local voters, which becomes very, very important for those folks that want to make sure they're only dealing with their residents and not overall respondents. If you look at overall survey results, though, this is the overall results that actually provides you information from not only the verified, but anyone who has responded to the question. And I'll just page down here so that you can see. Question 3 is, as an example, treating people involved in a respectful manner. You can see the responses from those residents. If you were interested in taking a look at just your verified list, you can also see that same information and see the sentiment. Now, this question actually says, please indicate how many times you've had contact with anybody in the police department over the last 12 months. And you can see the locations and the different responses from the different neighborhoods. But if you had a particular neighborhood that had a higher than maybe expected level of engagement with the police department, you could certainly dive into that issue even more. And that's the other nice thing about the Polco platform, is it's intended to actually allow you to have ongoing engagement. So you might want to explore even further on any particular topic that you're asking for. You can break it down by precinct, so you can see the sentiment by different areas. And then you also can see there's a lot of different precincts in Rochester. You can see different sentiment by age ranges and by gender. So it provides you, depending on which demographics you're most interested in, it provides you the opportunity to look at the information in a variety of different ways. But the intent is to try to engage your community in a way that is deeper and more comprehensive on ongoing issues that you're dealing with as a community. It's kind of, we're at that point in time where you don't need to be present in order to provide your input. And this platform is designed to try to accommodate that. What I love about the idea of working in rural Minnesota and trying to have rural Minnesota communities use this tool is the Polco platform is free. Any community can go to polco.us and get a profile set up. It takes 5 minutes to set up, and you can go ahead and use it. We allow for communities to customize it, and that's the way that we actually, our business plan works, is that you essentially subscribe to the demographics for a few $100 or the mapping for a few $100. So we try to make it easy for communities to actually customize the profile, but not prevent you from using the profile. So what I love about the notion of rural Minnesota communities using this tool is not only being able to benefit from it locally, but I think there is real value in trying to consider working together on issues that are impacting rural communities across the state in a kind of a standardized way. And because of that, you can aggregate that data and look at a full story, which tells a more broader story. And that's through the use of that reposting mechanism that I shared. Whether it's broadband or some other topic, I just think that it's really a valuable tool for rural Minnesota communities to use. I'm from Grand Rapids, Minnesota, and as I see of some of those issues that are impacting not only Grand Rapids, but all of the surrounding areas, having a tool like this to be able to capture localized info as well as to aggregate it at a higher level, I just think becomes a really valuable tool.
So Matt, do you have counties that are subscribed then?
Counties, we do have a handful of counties. Dakota County actually just started using the tool this last, I guess maybe within the last couple of months. But yeah, we do. We've got communities as large as, I think Dane County and Madison is probably the largest, but as small as North Oaks, which is a population of 4,000. So it's a tool that is usable at every level. I mean, every community, even in smaller communities, you think you know everybody, but honestly, when you actually go out and explore topics and extend it out to the broader community, it becomes a really useful tool to get deeper information from.
Could a non-government entity use this?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Associations are using it. Nonprofits can use it. If you have a constituency, you can, if you have a list of emails, there are neighborhood associations that are using it for collecting neighborhood level data. So it becomes a very versatile tool.
What would you say is the the best example of success where policies have really changed as a result of community participation?
Well, I'm thinking that communities are going to be focused on budget priorities this upcoming year, just because of all of the revenue impacts and the economic development impacts. The city of Bloomington just started using Polco this last, with the COVID assessment tools. But they had a budget question that they just asked, and they were trying to figure out what to do with the community center and their DMV. And so they went out to the community and asked, what should we do? Both of these need to have improvements made. Should we be investing, or should we be relocating the services that are provided in that building? And very clearly, the community, and they had just an unbelievable level of response, like 3,000 responses, said, close the community center and keep the DMV open. And so it's a great example of how it can help communities just get a broader sense of where the community is on budget priorities and service level issues. And I think that as communities start thinking about budget changes, there probably will be an increased level of interest on doing regional kind of conversations, because I think the conversation or the issues that we're facing are probably going to force more collaborative kinds of conversations. And using a tool like this across communities that are in a particular region, I think will be really helpful for those conversations.
Okay. Ann Bradis, I'm wondering what you think as a local community media person.
I'm really excited about this because I have used Google surveys for a long time, and I found those very useful, easy to use, and they also give real-time data graphics on a rough measure. So I'd be interested to hear Matt say, what are the improvements or the value adds that this tool offers?
Well, Ann, before I tell you that, the media industry has really been high on this tool. I don't recall the name of the centralized service in Madison, but the Madison parent news paper company has been using it, and then they actually are kind of using that reposting tool for all of their underlying papers in the more rural sections of the community. The Forum in Dakotas have used it for the same purpose, Dallas papers. And so the media area is I think a really growing industry. And a couple of reasons for it, which kind of leads to your question. It provides real-time organized data that you can separate out your verified responses from your overall responses. It just becomes a great tool for giving confidence that you're dealing with your local residents. And getting data at a level where you can actually see different segments of your community and differentiations between demographic groups. And so that as you start thinking about what decisions do I need to make around whatever policy issue I'm dealing with, you have now data to inform your decision making. It's just information, right? And so but it's data that councils and elected bodies and appointed folks currently do not have. And so it just helps you get to a much deeper level. We use this thing called the collective wisdom of the crowd, which just simply says you go out and you ask a collective group of your residents about a topic, and instead of relying on the voices that you only hear from.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan. I'm extremely interested in this because, as I say, I've used the Google Form survey tool at rural county fairs. And I will say just the rough, not very granular information I get from that is fantastic. It really does influence decision-making. So I'd love to know more, especially about media case studies. Where might I get that information?
You know what I'd love to do is I will get that information and a bill, and maybe he can distribute it out to the members.
Excellent. Good. I'd love that. Yeah.
And ironically, I was just thinking about our county fairgrounds, that this would be a good tool for them because they're still trying to decide if they're having a county fair, the use of the building, and it's a nonprofit, and there's been some financial issues, and I think they have a lot more support than has been out there. But and they have a very large board from all over the county, but that's a big question in Leesville County right now is what's up with the county fairgrounds and what's up with the county fair. And I think this kind of tool could be quite interesting for that, but got to get those people on board first.
No, I agree. And that actually is very common at county fair boards, rural county fair boards around the state, is that they're having trouble. But they're a great venue as a hub for information exchange. So,
Matt, does Polco offer support on how to write good survey questions?
We do have that available. Yeah, it's designed for communities to write their own questions, but one of the things that we are just implementing now is actually providing a library of questions so that you can just basically pick and choose your topic, and then you can tweak it to meet your own local needs. We do have that service, Bill, available. I've not run into communities really having difficulty writing good questions, but we're going to make it even easier by providing a library of relevant question content for people to grab onto.
Who is actually the subscriber to Polco? Do I need to be part of city government?
It's our local, I can answer that a variety of different ways, Ann. Okay. You can actually have a profile individually if you are interested. Our main marketplace is local government, but when I say local government, it really is any level of government, but it can also be any kind of an association or organization. So the answer is yes, you can get it as an individual, and we would just need to think about what would work best for helping you get the information that you need.
Right. Well, I'm a nonprofit that works with kids, so yeah. It has a direct and broader community mission.
Yeah. I'm actually working on a project right now with the National Drug Endangered Children's Group.
Mm-hmm.
national deck, and they're interested in doing an assessment nationally around their population. And
Interesting.
so that probably sounds kind of relevant to what you're doing.
It does, especially in these fraught times with the protests. I'm Minnesota Children's Press, so I work with kids writing and illustrating their own books. But several schools have asked me to come in and do audits of their library to try and have children author books that are more relevant to their experience. Because as you can imagine, most libraries have white majority books still. We are
currently working with, I'm not sure the name of the group, but it's a National Library Association on trying to actually introduce the platform into library services.
Well, we should talk because courtesy of Blandin, I had some great productive times at their meeting last fall with the Minnesota librarians and other allies. So
that'd be great, Ann.
Yeah, I'd love to do it.
Good.
Hey, Matt, if you wanted to put your contact information into the chat box, people could grab that.
I would be happy to.
Thank you.
Good. Questions or comments for Matt?
Let's see here.
Jim, I have a few more questions.
Go ahead, Jim. You're kind of low on the volume.
All right, you know what? Let me get rid of my earbud here. That'll help. Is that better?
Much better. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, thanks for letting me know. Yeah, so good questions so far. I have a number that I jotted down as I was going, trying to think in terms of some of the elected officials I know in our area. One of the questions is whether there can be information provided about possible systematic bias in the survey results, because a certain subsection of the population is going to reply to these polls, and that might or might not compare well to the demographics of the county, might or might not be adequately similar, and it seems not that difficult to include some of that information in the results of each survey. Does that tool already exist?
You know, every community is a little bit different, Jim, in terms of how they approach it. And it ranges from an engagement tool where you're less concerned about that than a scientifically valid tool where you're totally concerned about that. And that's one of the benefits of being involved with the National Research Center. Their focus has always been on scientifically valid surveys where it's random, sampled, probability-based in order to deal with that issue. When they use the technology platform, they randomly assign and invite people to participate. So getting to that scientifically valid level is something that many communities are concerned about. A lot of communities that use the engagement tool simply are wanting to get people's input. And it's really this ongoing dialogue on things, just getting a sense of where the community is. And so it really does vary from community to community, but there are ways to deal with your issue. Okay, and as you use the tool, it's fairly easy to decide to include that kind of ways to deal with my issue? Yeah. As you're engaging, because it's a real-time tool, you can see who actually is engaging. And so if you have a question where you want to make sure you're involving underrepresented populations or elderly populations or whoever, you can actually monitor that and tweak your communication outreach strategies to deal with it. If you're in a scientifically valid kind of an approach, it'll be a random sampling that is designed working with you as a community to deal with whatever the concerns are that you're trying to assess. Okay. And I assume the main advantages of Polco over SurveyMonkey and Google and other tools like that is the integration with demographic data and voting data, or what are the other advantages? You know, I think a variety of things. Certainly the verification process and the way that we approach it from just from our kind of overall outreach strategies. We're kind of unique in the way that we have our mobile app. And we find that about 60%, 65% of folks are using our mobile app as opposed to a laptop. And I would say probably the verification process and the ability to gather the demographic data is probably the biggest differential. Okay. You mentioned Polco is free. How do you get your money? The Polco platform is free. And I'll put in it's just polco.us. We operate on the basis of what we call micropayments. It's essentially allowing communities to select the add-ons that they want. If you want to be able to map out the sentiment, you buy a mapping element. And it's an annual subscription. If you want to know your age breakdown, you buy the age demographics. And so it's really on, it's a subscription approach where you customize it based upon your own personalized needs.
Okay, and I assume you have good policies in place about not sharing the data, anonymization of the results, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
You have a guide for people who aren't as necessarily familiar with how to write a good poll or survey or whatever on best practices, how to avoid push polling, and what questions to ask, what questions to avoid asking, anything like that?
We have a knowledge base that's got just all sorts of information and guides and best practices for people to use.
Okay, good. Thank you, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Matt, I want to thank you for joining us today. I think it was really interesting, and I always learn more. And I've heard about it 2 or 3 times. It's easy to go on the website and set up a profile and play around and look at it. So I'd encourage people to do that. Any
Good,
other
good.
closing comments, Matt?
No, just thanks for the time. I think communities to be successful have to figure out a way to be able to engage more successfully with their community. And we know that it's going to include technology. So you just got to find the right technology to allow you to do that. In order to make decisions, you can't just work from your gut in these complicated times. You need to have data. And that's the reason why I joined Polco when I did. And it's proven to be true that it does allow you to get a deeper level of conversation going with the community. We're a nimble company. And so as we grow, we're modifying it all the time to meet the needs of communities. And it's always fun to be able to have these kind of opportunities to talk about the tool and to also kind of have an interaction with, local leaders. So thank you.
Good deal. Well, we've got very active people here in their communities. Some of them are with the government, others are just activists from nonprofits and community betterment organizations. So it's, I think people are always trying to gather and understand better. So I think this is a good tool for them to consider.
I find it very exciting. Thank you all.
Good. Thanks, Ann.
Yeah.
Other topics on people's minds?
I think I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.
Okay. Thanks,
All right.
Mary.
Thank you, Matt. Oh gosh, where do I? Oh, there it is.
Yeah, thank you, Mary.
Can never find where to stop it.
Speaking of the recording, I'm looking forward to sharing this one with some of our other